all presumption sin, or are there just presumptuous sins? Now, the person who asked this question was thinking especially of Deuteronomy 1:43, which says that God spoke to his people, but they didn't listen to him, and so they then presumptuously went up to fight the Amorites, but they were defeated because they were presuming upon God. So they presumed upon God that he's going to come and help them beat the Amorites, and they just, they took that for granted, that God would be with them and that he would give them victory, but they never took the time to actually listen to him about what he wanted for them, so they committed the sin of presumption, and so they were defeated. And so the question here is all presumption sin, or are there just presumptuous sins? Now, what is a presumption? A presumption is an idea that is taken to be true and that is often used then as the basis for other ideas, although it's not known for certain. So we act on something then we don't know to be true when we presume something. When we presume that something is true and then we act on that presumption, we don't know if it's actually true. And in the case of the Israelites, they acted on the presumption that God would be with them, but they didn't know that to be true. And in fact, it wasn't true. So they went up to fight the Amorites and they were beaten. And this is actually what happens to the Israelites multiple times throughout the whole Bible. They presume that God is going to be with them as they fight their battles many times, but he actually wasn't with them, and so they're defeated. So for instance, you could also look at 1 Samuel 4, when the Israelites go out to fight the Philistines, and they bring the Ark of the Covenant along with them as though it were some kind of good luck charm, and they started to treat God as like a superstition, right? A lucky rabbit's foot that would give them success. And so, in other words, they presume upon God that he's going to be with them, that he's going to help them. But they don't care about him or what he tells them to do. They just say, oh, we're God's people, and so God has to help us, right? Well, no, it doesn't work that way. And it's not just in the Old Testament that we see people presuming upon God. You see this in the New Testament as well, especially among the Jewish people and among the Jewish religious leaders, who they say to themselves, hey, we're Jews, we're Jews, and because of our status, our ethnic status as Jews, that gives us an advantage. That gives us special grace or the special love of God because we're God's chosen people. So they presumed that because of their ethnicity, that would earn them God's good graces, if you will. But if you recall, John the Baptist, when he's out baptizing and these Pharisees, religious leaders, come up to him, he says, don't you say to yourself that you are children of Abraham, or that Abraham is your father, for God is able to raise up children of Abraham from the very stones, right? In other words, so don't presume upon God that he owes you something because of your ethnicity or because of your morality, your perceived moral goodness or your moral superiority. God doesn't owe you anything, right? He doesn't owe you anything. He's the creator. You're the created one. To presume upon him is the height of arrogance, the height of pride. It's to say, look how good I am. God, you owe me something, whether it's victory in battle or something else, right? Or a blessing or whatever. But there's another kind of presumption too. And it's in James 4. We actually see James condemn having this spirit of presumptuousness. In James 4:13, he says, come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make profit. He says, but you don't know what tomorrow will bring. He says, what is your life, right? For you're a mist that appears for a little time and then it vanishes. So instead of saying, hey, we're going to go and do this and this and this, he says, instead of saying that, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, then we will go and do this or that. And he says, as it is, you boast in your arrogance, and all such boasting is evil, right? It's evil, that kind of boasting. We don't know what's coming tomorrow. And so the idea to say that, oh, tomorrow for sure I'm going to go do this or that, just totally disregards the sovereign will of God in directing the course of the future. Well, it doesn't matter what God has planned, because this is what I want to do, and so that's what I'm going to do. And so James says when we presume to have control over our lives, when we presume to know what's going to happen or what we will do, he says we boast in our arrogance and our ignorance. Because in reality, we have no idea what's going to happen. And even more so, we need God for anything that happens. The future rests in him, not in me. So I would say that presumption is definitely not a good practice for the Christian. It really, if not borderlines on pride, it crosses that line and runs into that area rather quickly. So rather than presume upon God, just trust him, right? Just rest and wait for him to act. He has promised that he will, and he is trustworthy. So fight your presumption with trust. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what God will do. You don't know the future. You don't need to know any of those things because God already knows those things. So don't presume upon God. Just trust Him.